Are you ready, kids? Alright, what we're going to be doing is the first instance, guys, what's happening here, as far as the negative sign, we know that means it's private, string, full name, private, int, district. It's under the field section. You guys should all know how to do that when you create a citizen class. Are you guys good with creating classes so far and that kind of stuff? Okay. Now the else inserts, just remember a common mistake is your default parameter or your default constructor. You need to initialize default values, and also very important during it, when not all values are received through, you also need to work with that there. Good question. Ignore, like here for example, there's a yellow underline, and the reason why it's yellow underline because technically there's nothing in this class which can change the value there. So you could make this final. Gray underlines, yellow underlines, things like that, there are suggestions. Ignore them. They literally, it will make your code a little bit more complicated. Things like final you'll learn towards the end of this year. But quite frankly, it's not necessarily better coding to make it final because you'll be adding methods later. We don't do a full complete program. If it's a full complete program and there's no way to change the name, yes, you would make that final. But it's not a complete program. We're doing sections of programs because that's what you got asked to do. So ignore gray underlines and yellow underlines. Anyway, the only thing that's bad is red. Light bulbs, don't worry about, but red, not so good. Okay, red is the bad one. Now, if you scroll further down, we go. Here's a fully parameterized constructor. Setters, getters. Do any of you guys battle with the appending or setting up the actual toString anymore?
Not really. So it's just the spacing.
Okay, with the toString, it's Java's been very kind because technically what a toString does is if there's I'm going to open up Excel to try to help with this example here. If, for example, I had a word, in this case we've got full name and district, we would have variables full name, which, for example, could contain the name, let's say, M-R. Okay. Now, technically, when you append it, it actually has to literally make that one string longer and attach it to the end, and it's actually quite a complicated function that occurs. But because each little character is held and each one is linked together. But now Java allows you just to go plus and then it will append whatever you say afterwards. Now we talk about in inverted commas as being a literal. So when you look at the question paper, it says there it wants the variable full name followed by a space, which is a literal, the word district full colon and a space, which is a literal, followed by that. So you literally just go, I want the full name is the field or that I want to be displayed there, plus, which means attached to the end, append, and then put a literal. You put your literal, in other words, what you want is your separator, or what you want to always display, no matter what the object is, because it could be any different objects. If there's, it doesn't matter the district. Jared, please off the computer. You are listening. Now, on from there, if you go plus district, you'll then see that then will append onto it whatever the district is. Now, it automatically converts, even though district is a number. If you append a number to a string, it automatically converts it into a string. Yes.
So you want to
I didn't record that, but the question was, if you put a backslash n, do you have to put a plus or not? And the answer to that is if it's inside a literal, you can just put it directly there inside the literal. But if it is changing from a field to a literal or a literal to a field, then you have to append a different type. So if you're changing from a field to a literal, you have to add it onto the end. If you or changing to a different, or for example, if you were displaying two fields next to each other, you would also then have to add the other field. If you had two fields with no literals between, but generally speaking, you would always have literals between. All right. The next question is your vote class. Are we all happy with this class here? Everyone should get 100% for that, right?
yeah, so that is the
Okay. Now the next question states the vote class, which creates an instance of your citizen, or as an object of your citizen. So in our vote class, one of our fields there is of the citizen, called citizen, and then a string candidate and interstriction. Now, one thing I did do wrong here is these say minus, right?
yes.
So I would have lost the mark because I didn't put.
So you're saying you're 100% your own test.
And usually speaking, if I were to write my own test for a 3-hour thing, I would make one mistake somewhere. Just because out of being silly and not paying attention. Not out of not knowing it, but just out of lack of focus. And I'll example of a \n, you append and then you would add a literal and so forth over there. The is valid part, that's potentially the more tricky one. So I'm actually going to code that again from scratch. That question I'm going to code from scratch, explaining it while doing it, because is valid is potentially a slightly different one. Now, the question goes down and it says there, code a method called is valid, which will return a message saying valid vote if the vote is valid, else return invalid vote if it is not. So now here, the actual what determines it to be valid or not is actually up in the scenario. And in the scenario, it says for a vote to be valid, a citizen must have cast his vote at the district in which he or she lives. So it's important that he has to be in the same district in which the vote is cast. So if we go back to our code, firstly, we know it's public. If we're creating a method and it's not stipulated, a method is public, okay? So it can be accessed from outside this class. Now, the next thing is the return type. And this is a typed method. And what type does it return? In this case, it's returning text. It says it will return a message is valid, return this. So it'll be a string. So technically, this method, I would code as a boolean, and I'll explain why just now, because you'd use it a bit later. But we don't know that yet. That's okay. So now we go. Is valid. Okay. Now, does this? That's the name. So we got given the name. So when you look at questions like this, you always highlight what is it. What is it going to return? In this case, it's going to return a message. So key things to look at there is return. And if it says something about receive, does this thing say anything about receive? No. If it says nothing about receive, that means there is no parameters. So we don't have to put anything there. We obviously also need to know the name of it. So we don't need anything in the brackets. We can go open curly brackets, enter. Now there is a red line, do not freak out. The best way to work with this, and the way that you can ensure that you do always get the marks, is to create a temporary string or whatever data type you should be returning, and then to return that value. So it's your guys, literally your choice whether you want to do this or not. You don't have to, but if you do that, you know you'll get the marks for the method structure, because now your method structure is complete. You are going to, your method says it's going to return something, and you did return something of the same data type. So therefore you'll get the method structure marks. Do you guys get that? Now, but you don't technically have to. What I could do is just go directly, if open brackets. Now, in this case, it's the condition. So I'm going to get back to the condition now. And then I could say else. And then I could just go return is valid, if it is valid. Else return invalid. Now, if I go now to the if statement inside here, what is the condition? The condition is I want to check if this district, so district, is equal to the citizen's district in which the citizen lives. Because a single equals, I'm glad you asked that question. When you're looking at Java, sorry, I should be more zoomed in here. When you look at Java, a single equals, if I said district, if I use the single equals here, you'll see it gives me a red underline. And the reason behind that is single equals is used for me to go int I is equal to 0. It means it assigns 0, the value 0. You're assigning a value to a variable. Whereas if you go like this, equals is a comparison, single equals is an assignment. So if I actually did say district, and newer versions of NetBeans shows it as an error, older versions of NetBeans or Java never showed it as an error. Well, so what it would do is it would literally change the district of the vote into the correct district. It will change it. It assigns the value of the citizen's district to that district and doesn't give a comparison. So double equals is a comparison, single equals is a. And remember, the other types of comparisons you have are greater than or equal to. You got equals. You've also got not equals, You also got greater than equal to,
Less than equal to.
less than equal to,
Yeah.
less than, greater than. Those are comparison for numerical values.
Yes.
We haven't got an entire compare string yet, but we will, yes.
So for when you're saying district equals.
The question was, why do I go get district? Why can't I just refer to it directly? We're referring to the citizens district, but if I go dot, there is no such thing. And the reason why we don't see that is because we made district private, didn't we?
Yeah.
So private means it's inaccessible from outside this class. So you have to use a getter to get it because it's private.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to access it. So for argument's sake, if we made the citizen public, and now this has got to do with data protection, if we made this, if we made this public, and we did the same thing, you'll notice there that I can then just go citizen dot district. But then that's not as good. It's not as good as making it so secure, etc. I'm just going to do that. So quickly go change this back to being private. I'll be with you now, Andrew. Oh damn it! I have to go to it again. Glasses. Okay, now I'm just going to pause this. Yeah, I think I've explained that well enough now. Do you guys understand how an if statement works? If condition between the first curly bracket and closed curly brackets, that if it's true, else means only if this is not true will it do that statement. But because no matter what it is, it's either true or false, right? Boolean only has two states. A condition is either true or false in computers. There is no gray area. It is right or it is wrong. So it means if it's right, do that. If it's wrong, do that. Do you guys get that?
Yes, sir.
There is also situations where I can, for example, go if district is equal to that, else if open brackets district is equal to 0. In other words, they voted inside inside like that's the global voting system. Anyone can vote in that place. Let's say district 0, everybody can vote at. Then you could also say super vote. Okay, and then you could have another. But now you see it'll be red until. So now there's given an alternative option, you see. So now I can go else if, which means else. So if this is false, then check this. Else, check that. So now you're doing multiple conditions. Do you guys get that? You learned else if in Scratch, it's just the syntax is slightly different. Okay.
But I didn't get that. So if district.
Go the step by step. We're inside the vote class, so the district field is where that vote was cast. So this is an object. So every time a vote is cast, this object is created. Now, if the district in which this vote was cast is equal to the district of the citizen, then return is valid. Else, if the district that was voted in was district 0, which for argument's sake in this scenario is a place where people can vote if they couldn't get back to their home or whatever, there's some form of online voting system somewhere, who knows, then it's a super vote. Else, if it's not inside district 0 and it's not, they didn't vote in the same location, that vote is invalid.
Okay.
Do you guys get that? So that's how you would say that in English. You first check if the district that they voted in was the same as the district that citizen is from, or then return that. Else, if the district that they voted in was 0, else it's invalid. Do you guys follow? Now we got to put it into the GUI. So inside the GUI, the first thing we would do in the GUI is we would actually literally we would declare our. Sorry, wrong one. Okay, so you'll see here that we declared two instances of our citizen and two instances of our vote in our default constructor, which will be called, because remember when you press play it runs the public static void main. It will then create a new instance of itself, which means it will call a default constructor. It will initialize all the GUI components. You then go ahead and you initialize your citizens and voters and the votes that were made. You then, when the user clicks on the citizens, which I already coded for you guys, you just had to literally add the code and you had to go set text and you'll run the toString and the set text here. Now, for this test that is happening on Monday and Tuesday, the only slightly thing that will be more difficult than this test is I would give you a couple of complicated methods. A method where you would need to do an if statement in, and a method that potentially will receive stuff. So you guys must be very careful what is part of that object and what do I need to receive to compare it to that or to work with. Do you guys get that? Those are the main things that you will need to do. There will be enough areas for everybody to be able to get at least 60 or 70%, but there will be challenging methods like that that will challenge you. Okay, that's this
Is that a
video done.
challenging-
15 minutes. Goodbye.
Is that a challenging method?
This one, no, not really, but this would be considered because you didn't know much back then. Yes.
So